And I'm calling this meeting to order. Our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could please all rise and join the board. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have a full house tonight. It's fabulous. Love to see it. Roll call of members, please, Maggie.
Trustee Gilbert?
Here.
Trustee LaBedz?
Here.
Trustee Bertucci?
Here.
Trustee Manganaro?
Here.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Here.
Trustee Dunnington?
Here.
Trustee Santa Maria? Trustee Zyck?
Here.
Trustee President Tinaglia?
Here. Very good. Thank you. Under minutes, we have two sets of minutes. One is item A. It's from the April 20th, 26 closed session minutes. Are there any comments or questions from anyone on the board?
Mayor, I have to recuse myself from that one.
We'll have one recusal noted from Trustee Gilbert. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Anyone from the audience? Thoughts on the meeting minutes? If none, we'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll move approval of the closed session minutes of April 20th, 2026.
Second.
Motion made by Trustee LaBedz, seconded by Trustee Dunnington. Any further comments or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And then the second item is from May 18th, which is another closed session set of minutes. Are the same questions. Any recusals from anyone for anything on that? Any changes or corrections? Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions? Seeing none, looking for a motion on that as well.
I'll move approval of the May 18th, 2026 closed session minutes.
Second.
Motion made by Trustee Manganaro, seconded by Trustee,
LaBedz.
Second by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
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 Unopposed, motion carries as well. And then next on the agenda is our accounts payable. And for that, we'll call on Trustee Bertucci.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move approval of the warrant register for the check date July 30th, 2026 in the amount of $4,759,792.85.
Second.
Motion made by Trustee Bertucci, seconded by Trustee Schwingbeck. Are there any questions or comments on the warrant register? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Zyck?
Yes.
Trustee Manganaro?
Aye.
Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
President Tinaglia?
Yes. All right, motion carries on that as well. All right, taking care of business quickly here. Item number 6 is recognitions and communications, and we have two items. The first one is why many of us are here, apparently, and that is a recognition of the Hersey Cheer Squad, and they are, believe it or not, state champs this year. That is correct? This is quite an honor for our board, quite an honor for our village, quite an honor for the school, I'm sure. I just spoke to the principal. Is she here? There she is in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around out in front with a microphone, and I'll ask, are the coaches here too? So if we can have the principal and the coaches come on up front here with me. So we're lucky here in Arlington Heights. We've had quite a few good celebrations like this for a few different reasons, and this is fabulous. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about how this all happened?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Berlinski. I'm one of the assistant coaches.
And I'm Megan Miramontes, another one of the assistant coaches.
And I'm Dr. Patty Groh, proud principal of John Hersey High School.
Well, we have a few things written down, so I'll just go ahead and read it. We're going to split it. So on behalf of John Hersey High School, thank you for recognizing our 2026 IHSA Co-ed Cheerleading State Championship team. This championship is special because this team wasn't just trying to win. They were determined to accomplish something that had never been done before. After coming up short the season before, this incredible group made a commitment that they would be the team to bring home Hershey's first state championship in co-ed cheerleading. It was an ambitious goal, but they never backed away from it. Over the next year, they earned every bit of their championship. Through early mornings, long practices, injuries, setbacks, and countless hours of hard work, they continued to believe in one another and refused to lower their standards. Their success wasn't built in one performance. It was built over hundreds of moments where they chose discipline, resilience, and teamwork.
When they stepped onto the floor at the state finals, they didn't just represent themselves. They represented their school, their families, and this community. They rose to the occasion, delivered 2 near-perfect performances over the championship weekend, and they achieved something that will forever be a part of the Hersey High School history. This team has set a new standard for what is possible. Their legacy isn't just a trophy, it's proving that with a shared vision, relentless work, and belief in each other, extraordinary things can happen. Thank you for this recognition and for celebrating this incredible accomplishment with us. Go Huskies!
Our head coach, Will Hansen. We love you, Will. Coach Hansen couldn't be here tonight, and he was just so appreciative of this honor. So we just want to say, let's clap it out for Coach Hansen.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, we're going to recognize some of the athletes. Some of them aren't here, but we're going to call them up anyway. Jenna Aguado, Anna Beamer, Haley Coors. You come up. Brooklyn Diglarson. I didn't think I said it wrong. I'm sorry. Kelsey Ernst, Mia Gabinelli, Claudia Gata, Carina Gata, Isabella Grana, Kira Grove,
Avery Hinman, Sydney Hinton, Carmela Hoseman, Isabella Kolkowski, Will Listapad, Lily McCula, Charlie McDonald, Scarlett McRath, Thomas Nizinecki, Ella O'Connell, Michaela O'Donnell, Eleni Russo, CJ Sivangosa, Grace Schmidt, and one of our other assistant coaches, Amanda Kays, could also not be here. Congratulations!
Anna, we're going to try and get a picture with other coaches and everybody, so if we can kind of get in, scooch in together here somehow, maybe 2 lines. Can we do that? I'm going to get to the end here with the principal. We'll get the flyers out in front. See, I know what that is.
Everybody's in place. Look forward. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Let me do one more. Very good. Thank you.
All right, before I let you off the hook, is there anything quick that you guys can do on television? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that. I think it's going to happen. All right, I'm coming over here. Oh, jeez. Awesome. Very good. Thank you, everyone, for being here and doing this. You know, it's really an honor for all of us. There's a lot of work that happens in Arlington Heights, and some of it is not quite as exciting and not quite as fun. So thank you for being here and making it fun for all of us. Congratulations. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Now, if you would like, you do not have to stay here through the rest of this meeting. So if the families who, by the way, I didn't get to say this, we know that the families had a lot to do with this. So thank you, moms and dads and families, for helping support these young folks. Congratulations, and you're welcome to sneak out while you can. Thank you. Yes, yes. All right, we'll give them a minute. Okay, so while they're leaving, we're going to go on to item number B of the recognitions and communications. And this is a very, very important recognition tonight. This is for someone who has been an outstanding contributor to the benefit and the growth of Arlington Heights for, Ernie, how many years? 48 years. And what I'm talking about is Mr. Ernie Bloomquist, who was our village prosecutor for all those decades, almost 5 full decades, doing it in a way that was respectable, honorable, and appreciative by all of us, the mayors before me, the boards before me, the staff before me. Is there anything, Village Manager Reckloff, that you'd like to say before we read this proclamation?
No, I think you said it. I mean, Ernie's contributions, I mean, he's been such a big part of this organization, this community in such a big way for so many years. I mean, you look at this community's only been in existence for 140 years, and he's been the prosecutor for more than a third of that. So that really says a lot. And I know there's gonna be a lot of folks that are gonna have a lot of things to share tonight, so I'll just leave it at that.
All right, very good. Ernie, would you please come up to the podium here? I'm going to read this to you. So on behalf of the Village of Arlington Heights, this proclamation recognize Ernest, or Ernie, R. Bloomquist III. Whereas Ernie Bloomquist III has honorably and with great distinction served as the prosecutor for the Village of Arlington Heights since 1977, establishing a legacy of dedicated public service and legal excellence spanning nearly 5 decades. And whereas raised in Mount Prospect, Ernie attended Prospect High School and Western Illinois University and taught at Lincoln Junior High School and attended law school at Chicago-Kent College of Law. And whereas Ernie was inspired to pursue a career in law by his 2 grandfathers, one who served as a night watchman custodian at the University of Michigan Law School, where Ernie witnessed and was impressed by the students studying late into the night, and the other who successfully represented himself to secure fair compensation for his home, which was part of the right-of-way for the construction of the Chicago Expressway system. And whereas beginning his distinguished legal career as an assistant state's attorney in the criminals division of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Ernie subsequently established a successful private practice while also representing the Arlington Heights community as its prosecutor. And whereas throughout his expansive career, Ernie handled legal matters ranging from local traffic violations and DUIs to complex homicide trials, and also has been a part of appeals in the Illinois Appellate Court, Illinois Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of the United States. Whereas Ernie has shared his profound legal knowledge through extensive lecturing, teaching, and writing, earning a reputation among his peers as a humble, honest, trustworthy advocate who views every legal case through the lens of a human impact. And whereas throughout his career, Ernie has earned numerous prestigious accolades, including induction into the inaugural class of the Prospect High School Hall of Fame, the Longevity of Science Award from the Illinois Local Government Lawyers Association, designation as a top lawyer in Chicago, and Man of the Year honors from the Northwest Suburban Special Recreation Association, the Illinois Crime Commission, and Masonic Lodge number 818. And whereas Ernie has served as an exemplary role model known for being gracious and generous with his time, and a tireless mentor to generations of legal professionals, a commitment so deeply respected that the Northwest Suburban Bar Association established and named the Ernest R. Bloomquist III Lawyer to Lawyer Mentorship Program in his honor. Now therefore, I, James J. Tinaglia, Mayor of the Village of Arlington Heights, along with the Arlington Heights Village Board of Trustees, do hereby recognize and commend Ernie R. Bloomquist III for his extraordinary career and his invaluable contributions to the legal profession and to the citizens of Arlington Heights. Congratulations. Ernie, you have lots of people here that want to wish you well, so I'm going to make this quick and just hand this to you. Or you want me to hand it to your family here? There you go. You have the floor and the microphone, and then I'll call up anybody who wants to speak as well.
Read that again. Please.
I'll leave that to Mrs. Bloomquist.
Okay. I was first introduced to the Arlington Heights Police Department when I was a junior in high school. They got me the hard way. And so I added to that experience by figuring if I can't beat them, I might as well join them. And here I am. Thanks for the kind words. That I wish my parents were alive to hear that said. And thank you for that honor, all of you. You've been generous in your recognition of me tonight. You've been generous with me for 48 years. You've been understanding and you've been patient as I tried to rehab from some of the illnesses that fell upon me lately. I appreciate that very much. It shows what Arlington Heights is. It's a town that really cares about its own and about the people who visit here, work here, play here. That span of that many years comprises 6 mayors, 4 managers, and 5 chiefs of police. Each one of them presented something unique and grand in terms of their service and their abilities, their ability to work together. So many towns, as we all know, go through such rancor in their politics and trying to get things done. In my 48 years, I've never heard anything or seen anything like that here. This town is built on a foundation of class, and you all represent the people who came before you, and all of those years matriculating added to the fabric of this town. This town is full of energy, it's full of happiness, it's full of goodwill, and that's because of you and people who preceded you who sat in those chairs, sat in that chair where Jack Siegel used to sit. It's amazing. It amazes me. My travels as a lawyer took me to other towns where I did petitioner work or had a contested matter or were hired for a case or two, and I never saw the cooperation, the standards, the high standards that you have in any other town. It started off with my interview with Jack Siegel. Most of you people remember Jack. Jack invited me to his office for an interview. And at the time, he was putting together his appeal to the United States Supreme Court on the St. Viator case. And for those of you who are not knowledgeable about that case, there was a lot at stake nationally in it. There would be no such thing as zoning or ability of a community to develop itself if we'd have lost that case. And so when I appeared in Jack's office, I opened the door of the big office and it was just full of clutter, stacks of books and papers and files and legal pads. And I couldn't find Jack. He was sitting in the corner on the floor. And he had books and things all around him and he was working on it. And that interview was really a microcosm of going to law school all over again, because he had me sit on the floor with him. And for 2 hours, we went through cases and argued issues. And I was at the time, I was still employed by the state's attorney's office, so I was really good on blood splatter evidence and fingerprints and ballistics, but I wasn't very good at that yet. And Jack made me the lawyer that I am. And I'll be forever grateful to him for taking a chance on a kid from the prosecutor's office. After we finished our interview, he says, well, I'm going to recommend you get hired, but you have to meet Rudy Hansen. Now, the Dean of Illinois Lawyers is referring me to the village manager to wrap up the interview process. And Jack, I'll just say one more comment about Jack. I gave a eulogy of him one day at the Bar Association, and this is heartfelt. Hart, you'll appreciate this. I said, Jack Siegel is the only lawyer anybody knows who can quote himself in oral arguments. and am I right? And so, with that said, I met Rudy, and Rudy was the dean of village managers. So he kind of invented the position after the war. And as we finished our conversation, I said, well, any recommendations as I get off and running? And he said, well, yeah, I got 3 things for you. Promptly return every resident's phone call. Okay? Number 2, don't embarrass the village. 3, be like Jack. Well, the first 2 weren't too hard, it turns out. But being like Jack, it was, as you can tell, I owe him so much, and I'm so appreciative, and I could not be recognized by this body without giving him his due. He was a great man, and I loved him. He was a great lawyer, great person. Well, off we went. We went to the Supreme Court. He let me be part of his team. And so we argued and we won, and that part of history is indelible. With that in play, my marching orders, of course, were not to embarrass the village and to do good work, so we did. We protected the village and promoted its codes. So we took care of the business in town to make this town safe for everybody. It was truly remarkable to work with great leaders and people who supported me. And more importantly than that, the staff, the Fire Prevention Bureau, the Health Department, the Building Department, they all promoted their jobs and worked with me in our cases to keep this village safe. And I worked with some really classy, honest, good, hardworking people who really cared about this village, as they do now. There's something magic about this place that when people retire, good people come and take their slot. Most of my work was done with the police department, and we covered everything from drunk drivers to truant students. We dealt with animal cases. We dealt with drug cases, fights, nuisances, and we did it well. We did it with class, and we did it to the point that Arlington Heights police cases in that courthouse are the standard that other towns want to be in terms of credibility, in terms of their preparation and their training. I got to prosecute for an award-winning police department of dedicated men and women who sometimes risked their lives for what I was doing in a courtroom. I always knew that if I grabbed the report and working in high-volume courts with high-volume cases, sometimes cases were tragic and emotional, and I had the Arlington Heights Police imprimatur on my file. The proudest moments I ever had were when I would step up in a case and say, "Good morning, Your Honor, my name is Ernie Blomquist. I represent the village of Arlington Heights." It still resonates with me, and it always will. So thank you for that. So we dealt with reckless and selfish drivers, people who drank too much and decided to take a chance in getting home. This town would continue to be served by good cops, and all they wanted to do was go home at the end of their shift and be with their families, like you would at the end of your workday. But a policeman doesn't know that. He doesn't know that what's going to happen to him in a workday. An airplane could fall out of the sky like it did some 30 years ago in Elk Grove. An armed robbery, a shooting, something awful. And yet they go and they do it, and they do it well, they do it with class, and they make good decisions for right reasons. That's terrific. We tried always to be fair and just with people. Having been the subject of a prosecution of Arlington Heights when I was a kid, I learned a few lessons, and I tried to impart those lessons on young people who came before me in prosecuting. It reminded me of an old judge who took me under his wing when I became a state's attorney. Took me out in the courthouse lobby and said, "Look at all these people here. They're all in trouble. They all are here. They don't want to be, but they're here because they're accused of something." He said, "Probably 30% of those people are bad people, and they'll always be bad. Their parents were bad. Their kids are going to be bad. They're just bad. The other 70% of them are good people who do dumb things. So keep that in mind when you're prosecuting them. Can the situation be rehabilitated? Can they get something out of the experience? Can I teach them something from the experience?" And so that's what we did. The other thing he reminded me about, and I carried this with me to my last day as prosecutor, was that a prosecutor makes about 20 times the decisions a judge makes in a court call. Think about that. So there's a lot that a prosecutor has to weigh: what witnesses to call, how to prosecute the case, what decisions to make, what to say, what to argue. And doing it in a high volume fashion requires the cooperation of your witnesses, the police. But it's like herding cats when you're prosecuting like that. I would be remiss if I didn't remind all of you people in this room and anybody else who's listening elsewhere that some officers didn't get the chance to go home. And I forever have thought of that through my matriculation with our police department. Tim Sheehan. He was hit by a drunk driver right in front of my office. He's paralyzed. He'll never walk again. He was a great cop and a good guy. J.D. Kim, the young officer, at a training facility. And he hurt himself and he couldn't be a policeman. His life's dream was to be a cop. Mike McAvoy, shot in the face, answering a domestic call. He came from a police family, and his family, he had to give up his life's dream because he was following the call of duty. Al Vargo. Al was killed by a drunk driver on Arlington Heights Road in Olive. I tell you where they are because I want you to remember those places where they fell. Like I never forgot the stop sign that I rolled at Dryden and Kensington. Chuck TJ, crippled, he was hit by a hearse of all things. And his life's goal to be a police officer ended there. Ray Chisholm, he was a senior officer, hit by a drunk driver on Rand Road in front of Rolling Green Country Club. Maybe you'll think of that next time you're driving down Rand Road, you'll see where his career came to an end. Bill Kirby, hit by a drunk driver. He was crippled for life. He was just on Euclid, just west of the racetrack. In our history as a village, we lost 2 other officers long ago that have been forgotten, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let that go to pass without them being recognized. John Corber was killed in 1924 at Northwest Highway in Highland. He was a World War II veteran, World War I veteran. Herman Garr, 1927. He was killed on Euclid and Northwest Highway right in front of my office. Some of them didn't get to go home. Some got to go home but not be police officers anymore. But it's been indelible in my mind when I see the brave men and women that I call my friends and my witnesses, that you remain proud of what they stood for and what they stand for yet. There's some real good people in there that we miss. I've been involved with Chief Pecora on a foundation we started to memorialize the loss of our officers, the 3 that we have passed. The board of that body consists of 3 former Arlington Heights police officers who all became lawyers. One of them became a judge. Guy Carm, Mike Butler, John Turtlow. So that's a nice foundation to do fundraising, because I'd like to see on behalf of this village a lasting memorial erected in town here. And hopefully we'll never need to use it more than that one time. I'm leaving you in good hands, great hands actually. Liz Hansos, you've met her. I met Liz as an opponent in a case 25 years ago, and we hit it off, and she eventually joined our office, and I didn't have to fight with her anymore, so that was a good deal for me. I am very grateful to you for your confidence in me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I know that there are some very special folks here tonight to help us celebrate Ernie, and one is near and dear to my heart, sat in his chair for 12 years, past Mayor Mr. Tom Hayes. Where are you, Tom?
Well, Mayor Tinaglia and members of the Village Board, thank you very much for the opportunity to just spend just a couple of brief minutes to talk about my colleague and friend, Ernie Bloomquist. I've been blessed to work with a number of great lawyers, especially here in the village of Arlington Heights. Contrary to popular belief, what a lot of people believe, there are some good lawyers out there. And over the course of my 34 years on the village board, I had the opportunity to work with some outstanding attorneys, including, as Ernie mentioned, the Dean of Municipal Attorneys, Jack Siegel, our own Robin Ward back in the back here is also here, and our current village attorney, Hart Passman, who I had the opportunity to work with for the last few years of my term on the village board. And so we've just been really blessed to have some really great attorneys. But Ernie, 48 years, it's really hard to imagine. Ernie and I actually go back more than 50 years. My wife, Sue, who's with us in the back also, go back with Ernie and his family about 56 years when, as Jim mentioned in the proclamation, Ernie was a teacher at Lincoln Junior High, where my wife attended, her and her sister. Sue's sister, Sandy, was actually in Ernie's class at Lincoln Junior High. I think she passed the course, I'm not sure.
She still can't speak English.
And one of my best friends in high school was Ernie's younger brother, Mark. And so I started visiting the Bloomquist household in about 1970 when we were freshmen at Prospect High School. Ernie had already left the home in 1969 after marrying his beautiful bride. But the remnants of Ernie Bloomquist was still in the house on South George Street in Mount Prospect. And so I am just so proud to call Ernie not just a colleague, but my friend. Ernie, I think we spent about 80 to 100 different liquor license violation hearings here in this very room. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. You know, it's good that that's where I got to spend most of my time with you, working with you on actually interacting with you in our professional capacities. But it also reflects great credit on the job that you and our police department and our village staff did in keeping our community safe. And so we had the programs in place where it could generate those liquor license violation hearings, which would hopefully prevent those liquor establishments from violating our liquor laws again. And so, Ernie, I'm just here to say thank you. You were a big part of the team. I was always very happy to talk about how we have so many different members of the team that work together, and you were a critical part of the success of the Village of Arlington Heights in keeping us safe for 48 years. And so again, congratulations on behalf of all those that I served with on the Village Board for all the great work and contributions to the Village of Arlington Heights. Thank you, Ernie.
I think it's clear that, the mark of such a great leader, you spent 10 minutes or so up on that podium there, and you spent most of the time talking about other people, like Jack and other folks that you worked with. That's remarkable. You're here being honored, and you're honoring everyone else. That's a testament to who you are and what you do and what you've done with your life. So thank you for being that way. I see a number of other faces that are from your past that are here. Is there anyone else who wants to come up and speak for any amount on this particular topic? Not to put Mr. Dixon or on the hot seat here, but I see him smiling over there. He's anxious to come up and say hello. Come on up. I know you've got something good to say. For those who don't know, Bill Dixon was our village manager for more than a couple years.
Thank you, board members and members of the public here this evening to honor Ernie. It's quite a turnout and very deserving. I did not intend to speak. I don't have a tie on or a coat, but it's summertime and I feel very comfortable in front of you. I thought the proclamation was excellent. It really captured a lot of the things Ernie has done. I thought Mayor Hayes, from the standpoint of, the chief elected officer of the village and the liquor commissioner, was very cogent and very on point with his remarks. Ernie's a great guy. He's very humble, but he's a wonderful friend to have lunch with. Greg Ford and I have lunch with Ernie about 4 times a year. We have a lot of fun, tell a lot of stories. Most of them are true. And I'm just real happy that the board was able to have this recognition evening for Ernie, and that he was able to be here. He's not one to pat himself on the back. As you, Mayor Tinaglia, pointed out, he's being honored. He's talking about other people. He's another stellar person who has served this community. I think he said it well about how Arlington Heights, I don't want to say is better than anybody because that gets into bragging, but there's a standard here in very many areas that has been upheld, and Ernie was a big part of that happening, as are you. So thank you very much, and congratulations to Ernie.
If anyone would like to address it, please raise your hand. I'll call on you. In the meantime, I know there's a couple board members that would like to speak. Trustee Bertucci.
Mayor, thank you very much. I just want to mention that what Ernie has done for this community goes beyond the legal side. Ernie has been a mentor, not necessarily on the legal side, but to community side to many of us over the years. Early in the 90s, when I was a young, career-oriented person, Ernie threw the hook on me and said, "Come here, kid," and one of the people that helped me to understand, if you want to do well for this community, here's how you get involved, here's what you do, here's what you think. And I got to tell you, he has done that not just for me, but he's done that for many of us. He has been a mentor to many of us over the years. If there was an Arlington Heights Hall of Fame, Ernie would be inducted into it. And I only wish we had one, because that would be the
Sounds
next
like
step.
a motion.
There you go. There you go. So Ernie, again, congratulations. Thank you for all the years that you've given not only the legal side of the community, but also the mentoring side of the community. And I look forward to our next glass of wine together.
Anyone else on the board? Trustee Gilbert, the lone attorney on the board right now.
And ironically enough, a story to that effect. I can thank Ernie for a lot of things, and one of them is getting me involved with the Village of Arlington Heights. I'm not sure if he remembers, but I want to say thank you. And I'll just tell the quick story. I had showed up to a bar association event a long time ago, not knowing anyone. Went to the event and found Ernie, or Ernie found me. I remember sitting at a table by myself, and he came and sat down, and we started talking. And quite honestly, before I knew what was happening, the next thing you know, I was sitting with Mayor Mulder, having a discussion about being involved with the Special Events Commission. And the rest is history. But if it wasn't for that conversation, and his help and encouragement to get involved with the village, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today. And so, again, I was inspired by Trustee Bertucci to say that and let everyone know that he wasn't always just concerned about the legal side of things. He was very invested in the community, to the point where he was trying to get others involved in the community. And I think that says a lot about his character. So thank you very much, sir. It is very much appreciated. You are a treasure. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? There is one more person I want to hear from, and that is Chief Pecora, who absolutely works with Ernie probably the most out of anyone in this room. And Chief is so eloquent with how he speaks. I know he'll have at least one good story for us.
Oh, boy, here we go. I'll warm this microphone up. Thanks for calling me and not asking me to raise my hand, because I was about to. As mentioned, Ernie's been here for almost 5 decades. I've had the privilege of working with Ernie for 44 of those wonderful years. Ernie is the consummate professional. He's a social butterfly, and his philanthropy is outstanding. And I'll address those 3 issues. The philanthropy side comes from Ernie's willing to stand up and help everybody. How many times did we see him in either the 4th of July parade or the Memorial Day parade, dressed up in his Elvis costume, out there helping the Buddy Foundation raise their funds for a well-deserved, in-town, non-for-profit. The social side, anytime we used to have a village get-together, it was Ernie, our friend Greg Ford, that would be out there wrestling for the microphone to be the master of ceremonies. They both did an outstanding job, because the social aspect was really there when Ernie or Greg were at the microphone. In the professional side, that's where I can attest through my 44 years that Ernie talked about fairness, he talked about equity, and he talked about justice, and he talked about class. And Ernie taught me, and he taught every member of the police department that's here tonight, how to be fair to everybody, how to treat everybody equally, how to administer justice without being heavy-handed, how to do it with class. And we learned that from Ernie. And Ernie, on behalf of every member of the police department, both current and past, we salute you for your service. And personally, I want to thank you for being a friend. That was the most important thing to me. As Ernie mentioned, 4 of us formed the Arlington Heights Police Foundation. Why? Because Ernie wanted to pay it forward. He said, the village has been so good to me for almost 50 years. He goes, I want to pay it back. And I want to honor the service of Herman Gar and Fred Korber and Alan Vargo. And I want to erect some type of a monument for them. So we needed to get together a 501c3. So thanks to the lawyers I hang out with, we formed a 501c3. And Mike Butler, who's in the back of the room, is the foundation's attorney. And it's Ernie's idea through which we're going to move this foundation forward to honor the service of the police department that Ernie has so dedicatedly served for almost 50 years. So Ernie, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it.
Very good. Greg, anything? Anybody else? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anyone else, please.
I want to say one thing.
Please stand up and introduce yourself. Stand up. I recognize you. Is it Sam?
Tom Buccinari.
Tom?
I've been lived in Arlington Heights since 1968, and I've owned 3 successful beauty salons in Arlington Heights for Valentine's Hair Company, Day Spas, Martinique, and I had 9 other salons. This man has helped me out throughout the years. I've given him many clients, and everyone today thanked me for what he's done to this community and the people that he helped. You couldn't get a better man, and I thank you very kindly. This is a great thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? If not, we're going to move on. Thank you, everyone, for coming and helping us celebrate a wonderful career and obviously a wonderful human being. So thank you, Ernie, for all that you've done. Appreciate it. Our best to you. So on to less exciting stuff. And if you want, we'll take a quick break here for anyone who needs to leave. The next item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. And I do have 4 or 5 cards here. If you're planning to speak on citizens to be heard, this is for items not on the agenda. And we do our best to keep it at 3 minutes or less for each speaker. So the first person I'll call on is Susan Garcia. Susan, are you here? Come on up to the podium, please.
Okay.
You're on.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Randy, the village manager. When I was here on July 20th, along with Fire Chief Lance Harris, set up a meeting with David, I'm sorry, I don't know his last name, from Bayshore Properties, the day after I spoke here about the issues we have at Stonebridge. David listened to our complaints. We went to Stonebridge. We went to my home. Trustee Greg Zyck was also there, as well as 2 other neighbors who had made complaints. He said he would make some changes. They did happen the following day, and then the day after that, finally, everybody in our neighborhood got relief from the tennis lights. So from that, I am very grateful. I have actually been driving around Arlington Heights in the evening trying to understand lighting. I've been reading a lot of code. A lot of it I don't understand. But what I will tell you is that Stonebridge is one of the largest apartment complexes. There is also 2 others, Waterford Place, north and south is Mallard Cove. One is a condo, one is apartment. Those are the only other 2 that have tennis courts. One has no lighting. The other one, they're on until 11 and the lights go out. Park District has tennis courts and basketball courts. All lighting ends at 11 o'clock and it's all on a timer. At Stonebridge, the lights are connected to the parking lights. So the tennis lights are on all night. The basketball lights are on all night. Twice I have driven by it around midnight. There are groups of young men not doing any harm, but it is a gathering place. Basketball are heard bouncing late at night. So even though we have taken care of some of the issues, and I have to say the tennis light impacted a lot of people, it made a big difference, there are still some concerns. What I noticed about a lot of the apartment complexes, the parking lights are mounted side of the buildings. Some of them are quite bright, others not so bad. at Stonebridge, we have them up on top. I think they are parking lights. I believe that we should implement the ordinance that we have for off-street parking to try to help us deal with the rest of the lights. The thing that concerns me is that Stonebridge will be sold. It's an investment property. The last owner had it for 7 years. Stonebridge has it for 3. They have a lighting plan that goes until 2029. There will be other light changes. I don't want our neighborhood to keep dealing with lighting issues because we don't have a lighting ordinance. And the one thing that could help us possibly with the parking, it's not being implemented. So I keep saying, why is it not being implemented? I haven't gotten an answer. And so I am here saying, thank you for everything so far, but I know that we have a way to go. It's just, we need to know that there's some way that we won't have to worry in the future. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. And I know that Chief Harris was part of that expedition that went out there to take care of it, so thank you, Chief, for handling that. Is there anyone else on board? Trustee Zyck, you were there at the meeting.
Yeah, I was. Really, just what I want to say is it's kind of what what Susan was saying. You know, when Randy found out about this particular issue that was going on with this neighborhood, he jumped on it, him and Chief Harris. They did some great work. They came out after hours to see exactly what was going on. Now, a lot of people get to see Randy and Chief Harris, just maybe on TV or in the newspaper or things like that, don't really understand what they're doing behind the scenes. This was a clear example of how hard they work and how much they care about this village to get this issue taken care of. And I also want to throw out for Stonebridge too, the management there, how they came and they took it seriously and they figured out a problem, or they figured out what the issue was, and they're doing everything to correct it. As Susan said, sure, there's still some issues that probably still need to be worked out, but this was a real fantastic example of how we as a village and the community work together to take some residents' issues and get it all worked out. So Chief Harris, Randy, I just want to say thank you very much for everything you did there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Another blue card here is Rob Brodecki.
Good evening, everybody. So while reading the memo on the COYM, the affordable housing project that's coming up later, I noticed a comment that said that we do not allow land banking for parking as it stands. I request the board to seriously consider and pass an ordinance that allows land banking as an option in lieu of fully building out per parking requirement without always needing special board approval. While long-term, we should do away with minimum parking requirements as a whole, since they are generally arbitrary and add cost and time to development, land banking is a good middle ground between the status quo and no requirements. This allows businesses to set aside a green space for additional parking space if needed in the future. Parking requirements tend to be an arbitrary number that tries to guess at a peak few hours and then requires the developer or business to build out a lot to accommodate this hypothetical number. A business generally can't even know how many people or cars to expect because they haven't opened yet, but we want to burden them with another step and more costs. These costs then generally get passed on to the end customer while creating dead space that doesn't contribute to our tax base and creates impermeable land that doesn't help with public works' constant work on water management. And even on Black Friday, these lots generally remain well below full. If anyone has a lot of time, the book, The High Cost of Free Parking, goes in depth on this. It's a bit of a tome, so it's also available as an audiobook on Spotify, which is how I'm doing it. It's more reasonable. Regardless, Trustees Schwingbeck, Bertucci, and Mayor Tinaglia spoke many times during our village priority meeting last year that we need to make it easier for businesses and developers to build and open and stop bogging them down with things. Allowing land banking would be a step toward that by reducing the costs and land needed for a project. A quick Google Gemini search, and I'll admit that means it could be wrong and I need to double check this, but points out other communities that do this in some form, including local ones like Mount Prospect, Park Ridge, Des Plaines, Lockport, Wooddale, and more in Illinois and the Chicagoland area. Allowing land banking will help us stay in the top of the race and lead when it comes to attracting businesses and letting them build and get started without adding unnecessary upfront costs. So please consider creating an ordinance that allows land banking without the need for special board approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Next is Keith Moons.
Bring my PowerPoint presentation back to the board, it looks like, President Tinaglia. Thank you, President Tinaglia. I'd like to review tonight what we were told at the last Board of Trustees meeting, which was on July 20th. Supposedly, there are two methods to choose the members of a special committee, such as the Historical Preservation Special Committee. The first method is non-transparent, undemocratic, done behind closed doors, does not comply with our municipal code. In this method, members are chosen solely by the village president and by the village manager. According to our legal department, since the village is a home rule authority, somehow it can ignore the terms of our village's municipal code, in this case, Section 2-203D, to establish special committees. Of course, this rationale, in my mind, is absurd on its face. It overstates the power of home rule with no precedent or reference cited at the time. And it begs the question, why even have a municipal code if, in the first place, if we can just simply override it at will because we're home rule? This method, in my mind, this method sets up for a predetermined outcome from the special committee looking for a legal pretext to justify that predetermined outcome. The second method that's available to the Board of Trustees to establish a special committee is transparent, it's democratic, and complies with our municipal code, whereby members are chosen with the advice and consent of the Board of Trustees. The obvious question here is then, why would the Board of Trustees, as our elected representatives, completely drop their sworn oath to uphold our municipal code to comply with this section 2-203 to set up a special committee? So finally, I'd ask that the Board of Trustees must exercise their elected responsibility by discharging the Historical Preservation Committee and, if necessary, reestablish it in openly, democratically, and transparently that is also in compliance with our municipal code. Thank you, President Tinaglia.
Thank you, Mr. Moons. There's a lot there that I would love to unpack and respond to, but I'm going to refrain, and I'll just ask our village attorney, Mr. Passman, a couple of simple questions. Are we okay, and did we perform our duties in appointing this task force, in your mind, appropriately?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Like you, Mayor, I think I'll exercise some restraint here.
Okay,
I have no
very good.
As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I have no concerns whatsoever with the legality of the establishment of the task force or the conduct of your office, staff, or the village trustees in doing so.
Very good. Thank you. All right. We'll move on then to Thomas Buchaneri. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Buchaneri?
I lived in Arlington Heights since '68, and I bought on Ironwood Drive in '70. And I occupy an acre of property. I'm representing the other 5 homeowners bordering Rolling Green. The company called Swallow did the sewer work. They encroached on my property. On the back end, I have 212 feet on the Euclid side and another 212 feet on Ironwood Drive. I understand, I had talked to the engineer, Scott Scuba. I left messages with him. I understand they're only going to asphalt 30 feet of Ironwood Drive. Swallow, and I need the help of the board, they're holding monies out for Swallow for anybody that had any major problems. In doing so, I've already going to be issued a check from Brian Crawford, the Forestry Department, for the damage he caused on the property. I understand we have a parkway. I occupy 212 feet by 2 feet that was ruined. I pay a landscaper, and everybody on my block pays. We have the same landscaper except for 2 other people. I have a bid of $3,800 to redo the 2 feet by 400 feet, well, actually, it's 900 feet, the whole, both sides of the street to the cul-de-sac on Rolling Green. I feel Swallow, not Arlington Heights, but Swallow should pay. They park their vehicles on our street night and day. Most of these workers that worked for Swallow, the first company, and then you had the second company that's doing the road work, and I have like 30 feet by 212 feet of parkway that I take care of. It costs me $25 a week for me to take care of your parkway. I water the trees, the 4 trees there, and I have a service come in to take the weeds out, and I do that 5 times a year. And unfortunately, I feel and my neighbors the same way, that the workers, they came in with these 20,000-pound vehicles. They took their heavy equipment. They damaged the street. The street's only 30 feet wide. We want to have asphalt. We want to take it back to how it looked. And unfortunately, I've got pictures here. If anybody wants to see, I've got pictures of the trucks, the parkway, the people that work for Swallow. He should pay, not Arlington Heights, for the damage he's already caused me on the encroachment on my backside of the property in Euclid. And I'm going to be waiting to check. I got to get it's a 30-day that I have to wait to get my money back. I already paid the landscaper. So in all, I would like somebody to take charge to really help us. They did Forest, the 35 homes on Forest. They did parkways. They did the bit streets. They put grass. And my twin brother, who was a business partner of mine also, lives on Carlisle. They did from Euclid all the way to Oakton. They blacktopped. They did the bibs on the streets. They did the grass. They did the curbs. This little street that I live on for 56 years, I want it to come back to its natural position. And if I could have the board or anybody from this position to help us, I would appreciate it. Thank you very kindly. If anybody wants to see the pictures, I have them here. Does anybody want to see pictures?
Well, I'll suggest you do this. Our village manager, Randy Reckhaus, is your perfect contact for trying to get to the next level.
Yeah, but the Swallow should be held responsible.
I don't disagree with you. Let's get some more
Thank you very
information
much. I
out
appreciate
and share your information with village manager Reckhaus.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, that's it for the blue cards that I have on citizens to be heard, which are, again, items not on the agenda. If you're here for an item that's on the agenda, just hold until that item comes up. But is there anyone else that wants to speak about something else that's not on the agenda?
Thomas.
Thomas, before you leave, I think you left your phone behind. All right. Are we set to move on? All right, we're going to move on then to the next item, which is our consent agenda. And the consent agenda is a list of items from A through H. They're posted here that will all be taken care of by one vote. Is there anyone on the village board that would like one of the items to be removed or would like to vote no or pass on any of these items on the consent agenda? Seeing none on the village board, is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask a village board member to remove one of the items to be discussed separately? Seeing no hands in the audience. Is there anyone, do we have a motion for the consent agenda items A through H?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda items A through H.
Second.
Motion made by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Bertucci. Any final comments from anyone? If not, this is a roll call vote, Maggie?
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Trustee Manganaro?
Aye.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Zyck?
Yes.
President Tinaglia?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Those items are all passed. So if you're here for one of those items, that has been taken care of. The last two items on our agenda tonight are under new business. And the first one is, I think, why everyone's here, and that's the appointment of Bridget Kraus to the Performing Arts at the Metropolis Board of Directors. Maybe I mistook that a little bit, I'm not sure. Bridget, could you come on up to the podium? And I'll call on Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move, as I did in the Committee of the Whole meeting, to concur in the mayor's appointment of Bridget Krause for appointment to the Performing Arts at Metropolis Board of Directors, completing the term ending September 16th, 2026, and fulfilling the next term ending September 16th, 2029.
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Trustee Dunnington and seconded by Trustee Schwingbeck. Is there any further discussion by anyone on the board? Anyone in the audience? What this is an appointment to our Metropolis Board, and I know that we do have some board members here and our president, Sue. Would you want to stand up and introduce the board members that are here and the director and so on?
Should I do it from here?
Yes, go right ahead. Well, you know what, Sue, come on up to the microphone with Bridget.
I wasn't loud enough.
I want to give you some airtime here.
Well, I would like to introduce first Tiffany Gates, our executive director, Johanna Mackenzie Miller, our artistic director. From our board, we have Stephanie Hoover, Kelly Barish, Chris Briggs, and we just, again, thank everyone, whether it be the trustees, the mayor, our community, for supporting Metropolis. If you have not seen Wizard of Oz yet, we have 4 more shows before the end of September. Our new subscription series starts in, oh wait, did I say September? Sorry. But in September, we have Ride the Cyclone, and that's the beginning of the whole new season. So just thank you to everyone, including all of you, for being a support to the theater and the School of Performing Arts.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sue. Bridget, is there anything you want to share real quick?
I just want to say thank you to Mayor, and thank you to the rest of the trustees for this appointment. I feel lucky to be a part of the Arlington Heights community and to serve it in this way, along with this dedicated board and very talented staff at the Metropolis. So I'm looking forward to a great many seasons.
Wonderful. Great. Well, let's go ahead and make this official. Is just a voice vote all okay on this? Okay, so the motion was made by Trustee Dunnington and seconded by Trustee Schwingbeck. Any further discussion at all? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. It's official. You are now a board member, so thank you for stepping up and volunteering for us.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
And so we are on to our last item for tonight, and that is item B under new business. It's 330 West Gulf Road, affordable senior housing development. And this is what we call early review. This is not a formal opportunity for commentary and a lot of detailed discussion. This is an opportunity for initial thoughts. And to give us better understanding of that, I'm going to call on Village Manager Reckloss.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, tonight the board's going to be providing early review feedback to a potential applicant for a project. And I know some of our new members of the village board, for them, it'll be the first time to engage in an early review process. And I just want to reiterate what it is and what it isn't. This is a process that we sometimes offer to potential applicants prior to a formal submittal of zoning applications, so they can get informal feedback from the village board prior to making a decision as to whether they want to engage in the time, expense, and energy required to prepare all of the studies, documents, and plans that are required for a formal zoning application. The village board does not, I'll repeat again, does not vote on or otherwise approve projects via an early review process. It really provides kind of a gut check moment for village board members to individually provide their initial take on a concept so the applicant can decide whether or not to actually pursue a formal review. An early review process is not designed, as the mayor indicated, to generate an exhaustive list of questions and answers for the potential applicant, as it's understood by all that at this early stage in the process, the answer to most of the questions is going to be, I don't know yet, because all those studies and plans haven't been completed. So please understand that you will not be getting the same level of detailed feedback and or questions from the village board. If you do determine you want to move forward with the process, this process again exists so the board can provide a few preliminary concerns and observations about these very preliminary concepts. Also, the other thing I want to mention is, as this is early review, the public has not yet been formally notified of the concepts. The project application has not yet been made, and for some projects may never be made after this phase. So obviously, once an application is made, the applicant will be expected and be required, in fact, to notify members of the public, and there'll be a number of formal venues for public input to be heard on any potential project before it's be considered for approval at a later date. Like any other project, we're going to start with the presentation with the applicant and then move on to Ms. Rodman, our Director of Planning and Community Development, and she'll follow up with some staff commentary prior to getting back to the village board feedback.
Very well. Thank you, Manager Recklos. And just to try and reinforce that, it is an expensive, time-consuming task to go through this process of formal review. You go through staff for a long period of time, asking for recommendations and commentary on your drawings and your concept, your design. Then you go to the Plan Commission, which is a public hearing. Then you go to the Design Commission, which is another public hearing. Ultimately, you land here at this village board after recommendations are made from the other commissions, and the public is invited and well-informed on all of those. So tonight is really just an opportunity to see if this application is worthy of that amount of work and money, frankly, to go through it. And so our job up here tonight is to just give them some general feedback, a little bit like a laugh test, a little bit like, testing the temperature, make sure it seems like it's okay or not. And no votes will be made. So with that, we're going to call up the petitioner. Is the petitioner here? Come on up, take the podium, introduce yourself, please. Share with us your hopes and dreams for this project, and then, as Manager Recklos said, we'll hand it off to the our Director of Planning to give our staff's perspective as well. So go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you so much. My name is Julie DeGraff. I'm the Vice President of Community Redevelopment for Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA, as we're known. We'll introduce our team a little bit more in a few minutes, but I wanted to start with just a little bit of context as to how this group came together. And POA has had the really great privilege and really a lot of fun working with members of the Church of the Incarnation United Methodist. They are a spirited group filled with the Spirit, and we have had a great time talking about potential opportunities for part of the land that they have owned for over 50 years, right at 330 West Gulf Road, where their current sanctuary is, and there is currently a very large green space. The way we came together was actually through a professor at Georgetown University named Dr. Bob Cristiano, who has started an organization called Sanctuary AP3. And what he and others have realized is that there are many faith-based organizations, whether they're churches or synagogues or other organizations like them, who have property that they may not fully use. And that property still plays a big part in a community. And how could that property perhaps be reconfigured, reused, reimagined to help not only support often the ministry or mission of that faith-based organization, but continue contributing to the community and maybe even increase their contributions to the community. And so about a year ago, we were contacted by Dr. Bob, and he connected us with the Church of the Incarnation and said, hey, we think this could be a good fit with a mission-driven nonprofit like POA, who is very much committed to work in partnership, not only with you as an organization, but with the communities that we work in across our many states that we're involved in, and try to see what might be possible here. And so we've spent the last good part of a year kind of talking through potential concepts, and what we're sharing today is really just that initial vision. And so when we think about what the mission is of this project, it really is about to figure out what is the best use to serve the community of the village of Arlington Heights, to serve seniors specifically, and to, again, extend that mission of this really great church. So with me tonight, a number of church members, but also Frank Lee, who's going to talk a little bit about Church of the Incarnation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I've been a Arlington Heights resident for over 50 years. I've been a member of Church of the Incarnation for over 50 years. And for a long time, the church has tried to find a way. We've got a lot of land that all we do is mow it. And we'd like to find a better use for that property. And with the help of this development team and the United Methodist Church and all of the work that they've done to bring us to this point, we think it's a great plan. And I think it will benefit our church. I think it will benefit our community. And just as importantly, I think it'll benefit the senior citizens who want to live in our community. Some years ago, I was the chairman of the Arlington Heights Housing Commission, and I know the challenges that stand in the way of bringing opportunity for affordable housing to our community. But I think this is a great way to do it. I think I'm not an architect, but from a building point of view, I think the layout looks really good. I think it's going to improve the sightlines on Gulf Road with the landscaping, which is kind of a park district kind of feel to it. I think it provides a good buffer zone to the neighbors and improves the community. So most importantly, though, I think this is an opportunity for seniors to find affordable housing in Arlington Heights. And as Arlington Heights community is an aging community, I'm sure that there are residents who at some point are forced to sell their home, would like to find a place to remain in Arlington Heights, the village that we all love. Thank you.
A little bit more information about POA. We are a nonprofit housing developer. We are mission-based. Our mission is to preserve, create, and sustain affordable, healthy homes that support economic security, racial equity, and access to opportunity for all. In our 25-year history, we've renovated or constructed over 14,000 apartments in 13 states and DC. We own and manage all of the properties that we have acquired, renovated, or constructed. I mentioned before, we often work in partnership with local organizations like the church, communities, and certainly residents. We are very committed to building sustainably, not only for today, but for the future. And we have incorporated a lot of very innovative green technologies in our work, not only to reduce our footprint on the environment, but to make sure that utility bills stay really low for all the residents that we serve. And most importantly is that community impacts are very integral to our work. So our property management team, POA Communities, has a whole community impact staff, and they work with residents of all different ages and backgrounds, but in senior buildings, what their focus is, and how do we help residents age in place with grace? How do they live as independently and successfully as long as they can with health and wellness programs, recreation, meal programs, and personal supports, including things that help residents feel very welcome and safe and empowered in their communities. We're also very lucky to have a great architecture partner. We worked with the church to interview several architects to see who might be best aligned with their experience and their commitment to this kind of work, starting with the early visioning. WJW architects fit that bill perfectly. They have done extraordinary work with senior housing and affordable housing and market rate housing across the Midwest. We're joined here tonight by Michelle Sablack, who will be available to answer any detailed questions that we have in these presentation of the concepts that will follow. So I think everybody's very familiar with this location at Gulf Road. And what you see here is, again, a very large green space, a very nice church that I know grew from its original footprint. There's plenty of room for things like the Christmas tree sale and the farm stand and trunk or treat when Halloween rolls around. We also know that the residents who surround this in single-family homes love to use the green space as an extension of their backyard. So one of the things you'll see as we share some of these concepts is how we actually work to preserve access to this green space and make sure that there's also a nice buffer between the proposed new building and the home. So things like we heard about tonight, lights and other things do not become a nuisance, but become very much screened from the neighboring residents. In total, we're looking at 60 affordable apartments with indoor and outdoor amenities. There was a time where there was actually more apartments proposed. The team at that time met with the planning department who suggested that that number was too high. So we really looked to right size the building to not only be economically viable, there has to be a certain scale to be able to support operating costs and make sure that we're able to operate the property very successfully, but not so big that it would overwhelm the site and feel like it was not in context with the neighborhood. So we've proposed a 3- and 4-story building, so parts have each of those heights, including gathering spaces, library, fitness room, recreation, and game spaces, a lot of campus beautification with a green space buffer, but preserving still a large green space. Looking at a dedicated parking lots for seniors living in the building and their guests, as well as the church. So 123 total spaces are proposed. Our budget is one that is quite typical of a project that is financed with the low-income housing tax credit, which is through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, or IDA. We also assume a private mortgage from a typical bank, other public resources that we would request through IDA and the county, Federal Home Loan Bank, and others. And the first part of an application to IDA is actually a preliminary project application, and that would be submitted in September is when we believe that that will be due. We also recently submitted an application for $750,000 in funding through the Village of Arlington Heights Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which we do think is an extraordinary resource, and we could put that to great use in helping with the pre-development costs and the overall project budget. That kind of low-cost capital is really critical in projects like this, but it also demonstrates support to funders like IDA, that the village is on board with the concept and is looking forward to seeing this be an important part of its community. So this image simply shows how the site exists today. So you can see that of the approximately 4.5 acres, there's a relatively small amount that's currently developed. And when we look at the proposed site plan of the total site, about 1.5 acres would be taken up with the building footprint itself. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different elevations. But what I wanted to highlight here is that these shared parking lots behind the church and behind the senior building are then buffered, again, on the sides, and then preserve this very large green space in the back, which we think could actually be improved with walking paths so that people who are not only living on site, but part of the church and part of the surrounding community could actually have an improved amenity next door. This is a view of how it would look. I guess the bird's eye view is what you would call this. And looking at how the building lines up with Gulf Road and then, again, creates that nice green space buffer. This one gives, I think, a better view of how the backs of the houses will still primarily back up onto green space. And again, we just knew that that would be something that could be an anticipated concern. It is one of the things that we would, of course, want to talk with neighbors about, and not just in the public forums of the hearings, but also in open houses and other events that the church is more than open to host, so that neighborhoods have a chance to ask questions, give their own input, and express any concerns. And we look forward to that next step and doing that work with them. These are, again, some of the other views as you're looking down Gulf Road, looking into a new entrance, which would slightly move the current driveway. We know that as an IDOT road, there's not a lot that can be done to change this, which is fine. So we're looking at a pretty simple modification to make sure that there's a very safe entry for people who are coming to church, as well as residents and their guests. We also show kind of the relationship between the parts of the building that are a little bit higher and the parts of the building that are the 3-story. And I know one of the comments we've received is, can we look at some different configurations of which parts are 4-story and which parts are 3? I think the short answer is absolutely. I think what we're doing, though, is looking to keep a footprint that doesn't impede too much on that surrounding green space and kind of erode whatever buffer that we can best preserve. Again, a few more elevations, just looking also back onto the green space area, looking at where residents would enter the building. Again, these are very conceptual, but we know that it's important to have a covered entry, that residents who are being picked up or being dropped off have a way out of the snow and the rain to get in and out of the building, with seating areas that are out front if you're waiting for a ride or you're just gathering with friends or neighbors. In terms of the timeline, I did notice an error here, but again, we have been working together for about a year. We actually selected the architect not in the future, in the fall of 2026, but in the fall of 2025. We started this review process with initial conversations with the planning department in the spring. And again, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get this early feedback before we launch into the hard work ahead in terms of the zoning process, the funding application processes, and all of the other approvals that would be necessary to reach an anticipated financial closing in the summer of 2028, which seems like a long time from now, but there's lots of hard work to be done between now and then. And IDA does take about 10 months to get through their full decision process. And I will say too that if we are not successful with the first IDA application, that would be repeated again a year later, and that process would continue. So with that overview, I'd love to invite any questions. And again, I'll be joined by Michelle and others who may be able to speak to your questions. So thank you again. This has been a great opportunity.
No, thank you for that brief introduction. I think before we go to questions, we'll go to Ms. Rodman from our planning department and have a planning department review.
Thank you, Mayor Tinaglia. The applicant did an excellent job reviewing their proposed project and their application this evening, so I will try not to repeat what you have already heard. The project, as they indicated, is at the 33 West Gulf Road location. This is an aerial similar to what you saw in their presentation. The existing zoning for the property is R3. They are requesting to rezone the property to R6 in order to accommodate the proposed density for the independent senior living facility. The comprehensive plan designates the use as institutional. The property could be rezoned as an institutional use, but then the multi-family use would be a special use within the institutional district. So it would really be more appropriate for it to be rezoned as R6 should the project move forward. Oops, apologize for that. That's just a snapshot of our current zoning map and the future land use map. So you can see the existing zoning R3 is consistent with the surrounding zoning. All of those single family homes to the west, east, and to the north are zoned R3 as well. And in the future land use plan, you can see the majority of that area is designated to remain as R3 with the church property shown as institutional. This is the site plan that you've already seen of the existing site. And then, of course, you've seen this proposed site plan as well. As staff detailed in the memo in your agenda packet, the primary concerns that we have related to the project relate to the overall site layout, the building height, density, parking, site circulation, and landscaping. And I'll just touch at a very high level on each of those. With regard to the site layout, staff's largest concern is with regard to the setback of the property from the west property line. So the portion of the building that abuts the west property line is the 4-story portion. It only has a proposed setback of 20 3 feet. That does not meet the requirement under the R6, but regardless, staff feels that that is not a sufficient setback given the adjacent use as well as the proposed 4-story height. So we do have concerns about that, and we are suggesting increasing that setback as well as considering reducing the building height either to 2 or 3 stories or incorporating some sort of building setback, as we have seen developments in the downtown incorporate when they abut single-family residential uses. With regard to parking, the proposed parking layout of 123 stalls does run a parking deficit in accordance with our code. So they would be required to have 149 stalls. And in order to accommodate that parking, which they have room to do on site, it would, however, eat into that proposed green space. So that is something that needs to be considered. That green space would be reduced to incorporate the additional parking stalls, as well as to bring the existing parking lot up to code in terms of the required parking lot landscaping. Site circulation, we also have some concerns about the ingress and egress to the site. There is currently, as proposed, only one full access to the site, and that would be off of Gulf Road. The Millbrook access is currently only an ingress, meaning people can turn into the site, but they can't exit the site from that under this proposed plan. And so site circulation and traffic flow would need to be evaluated should this proposal move forward. And then finally, landscaping is a concern for staff as well. Again, that primarily relates to appropriately buffering the use from the adjacent single family. You've seen these bird's eye view already and some of these other renderings. This is the unit count that is proposed, total of 60 units as they indicated, with 54 of those units being 1-bedroom and 6 of those units being 2-bedroom. I won't go through all this detailed parking. The next component of the project I wanted to touch on was the affordable housing component. So you're all familiar with our inclusionary housing ordinance, which requires that 10% of publicly supported projects, and by publicly supported, I mean village supported, 10% of those units must be designated as affordable in perpetuity. So 6 of the units in this project, should it move forward at 60 units, would need to be designated in perpetuity. That is not a requirement of IDA, so they are able to obtain LIHTC funding and potentially other funding without having to designate the units in perpetuity. They are only required to designate them for a certain number of years. I believe it's 30 with LIHTC, but I could be wrong. So that is something we would want to make sure they commit to as part of this process. They have applied, as they indicated, for funding through the Village's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is by way of the new guidelines that the board recently adopted. So I will touch on that process momentarily on what that looks like. And then they have also indicated that because they are seeking LIHTC funding, they are asking the village to submit a letter of support. This is something we have done in the past, but only upon receiving direction from the board that it is a project you are willing to support. And so we would provide that letter to them so that they could submit that with their preliminary application to IDA in September. If they receive positive feedback from IDA in September, that full application is due in March of next year. So in terms of next steps, should they receive positive feedback from the board this evening and choose to proceed with the project, the next step for them would be to go before the Housing Commission this month to review their Affordable Housing Trust Fund application. So under the guidelines, the Housing Commission reviews and vets those applications initially and then would make a recommendation to the village board as to whether or not to fund that application in full, in part, or perhaps not at all, and if they have any suggested conditions or terms related to those applications. So that would be the next step, particularly because this applicant is saying that that funding is critical to the project moving forward. So we would take them before the Housing Commission, and then the next step in the entitlement process would be for them to go to the Conceptual Plan Review Committee. Oh, this microphone's cutting So the CPRC is a subset of our Plan Commission, as many of you know, and they would also provide them some preliminary feedback on the proposal. Following the CPRC review, we ask the applicants always to conduct some public outreach on their own. This is not village code required outreach, but it is outreach we encourage to allow them to get some preliminary feedback from the community and begin that conversation about potential impacts and modifications to design. And then once that public outreach is completed, the development proposal would go before the Housing Commission. So this would be the actual project itself as opposed to the funding request. So the Housing Commission would consider the application and review it for compliance with the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance and then make their recommendation. Then the project would go before the Design Commission for their consideration as it relates to the building design, and then finally to the Plan Commission and the Village Board. And of course, as you know, the Village Board would be making a determination not only on the zoning entitlements, but also on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund request as well. So this evening, what we are asking the board to do, what the applicant is looking for as well as staff, is the board's feedback on whether or not you believe this proposal for the 60 units of senior affordable housing is appropriate for this particular site and the surrounding neighborhood. Staff is also looking for feedback on whether or not you're supportive of the village submitting a letter to LIHTC on behalf to IDA for their LIHTC application. Third, we are seeking some direction from you, some preliminary feedback on their request for a loan from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then lastly, any feedback you may have as it relates to the concerns that staff has raised with regard to site layout, parking density, et cetera.
Is that it? Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Ms. Rodman. I have a number of questions that I'll hold for the moment. Again, I'll remind the board, this is really not about getting too deep into the project, but certainly asking important questions or sharing important perspectives. So we'll start on this end of the board for the beginning, and we'll work our way through. And I do have 4 blue cards that we'll call on for the audience to speak as well. So go ahead and we'll start with Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my concerns for staff, and as I've publicly said, I'm certainly in favor of supporting affordable housing, affordable living. We went through this not too long ago with another development. We always talk about how important it is to take care of the seniors from our town, but if I'm not mistaken, we really can't guarantee that this is going to be helping our seniors, if that's correct, because this could be affordable senior housing for anybody, not necessarily Arlington Heights residents who might be in need of that. That's correct, right?
Can Julie come back?
I'm happy to let the applicant answer, but my understanding is if they are obtaining funding through IDA, then they are not allowed to restrict the units to Arlington Heights residents.
Right. Yeah, and I'm all in favor of, not only affordable housing in general, but, really looking out for our residents. And I just want to make it clear that that may not happen. We could be seeing seniors from all over. When I look at this project, I guess a couple of things. Regardless of whether this was affordable senior housing or just apartments in general, I'm concerned about the 2 buildings, the 3 and the 4 stories, because when we were talking about the last proposal that we went through where the building is now being built, it started out as a 3-story, and when it was finally approved, we went down to a 2-story building, and there were really only a couple of residents that were bordering the back of that property. I've driven over there and looked, and I've looked at all the visuals. I mean, we've got about 19 or 20 residents now that are in this backyard. And on the last project, with only a couple, we heard from hundreds and hundreds of residents on a 3-story. And now we're looking at, going from a building on that site with only 25 units, now we're talking 60 with a total of 19 residents. So I'm concerned about that. I mean, it's completely surrounded on the west, the north, and the east side by these homes. Where one of our last projects, which was, approved, we were really just dealing with a couple of residents on the backside. The other, I guess, comment that I would make, and I wanted to kind of understand this, when Mr. Lee spoke about being a member of that church for 50 years, I really wasn't sure if that church was still an active church. Certainly the parking lot looked very old. So, is that church still an active church? And, how many parishioners do they have, on site? Or is it not an active church? So that's a question that eventually that I'd like to see answered, because if it's not an active church, is there thought about taking the church down and just putting up the buildings itself? The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we've got about 1.3 million in there. This applicant's asking for over half of it. And we've been talking a long time about doing some good things with that money, but here we've got one applicant asking for over half of what we have, which, may not leave room to do other things. There's been some talk about a loan, this being a loan. I don't know how many years that loan is going to be for, if it's going to be paid back quickly or over a long period of time. So that's certainly something that I'd like to see answered. And then, another thing, when you put in apartments like this, I know the property we approved recently is paying quite a bit of property tax. And if I read correctly in our information, the church is still going to own this property. And if I'm correct, I don't believe do churches pay property tax in Arlington Heights?
Not generally.
So I guess one concern is with the, where we looked at that other land that put in those 25 affordable units, there was property tax associated with that land. So here you've got a church that owns the property and is going to continue to own the property and maybe not paying property tax, but still be the owners of the property. Is there going to be property tax being generated by now these apartment buildings? But probably my biggest concern, and I'm assuming it's going to be a concern of many, many neighbors, which we were able to work out on the last project, is just the sheer size of these two buildings, the proximity to these 19 or 20 single-family homes, and the setback. Ms. Rodman, as you pointed out, being so close to some of those homes on, I think, the west side of the property. So those are my big concerns. And I know I'm going to have lots of questions if this does come up, but that's kind of my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Dunnington?
Thank you, Mayor. First, thank you to POA and to the Church of the Incarnation for bringing this project. I think it's a really good use of space that is not currently being well used, since it's kind of just a parking lot and grass to mow right now. That was mentioned. I also think it's a really good location for an affordable housing location, since it's very walkable area, with it being close to Jewel and Walgreens and all the shopping that's at Gulf and Arlington Heights Road. It's also on the Pace bus route, and so I think that would be really helpful to the potential residents of this location. So I know that the village board has, talked a lot about affordable housing. We made it our number 2 strategic priority, and we specifically talked about wanting to help seniors stay in Arlington Heights. We might not be able to control exactly who's in this building, but I think that any seniors that we could help is valuable. Let's see. I also happened to read this article that 2024 saw a record surge in homelessness in the U.S., and the fastest growing group is seniors. People age 50 and older have grown from about 10% of the homeless population to half. And so that is something that we're experiencing in suburban Cook County. It's something that I've seen as a PADS volunteer in the area. So I think that it's really important that we focus on this group of people. And we know that the increase in homelessness is driven by factors including housing affordability and fixed incomes. We also, the village board recently approved a project for the Moorings, which is a 70-unit, 5-story building for seniors. And so that's kind of a luxury building. So this kind of seems like a good balance to that large project that we approved. This is for the residents that, want to stay in Arlington Heights but need something affordable. And so I think that really shows that we're thinking about all of our residents, not just those that can afford the luxury buildings. With it being close to Gulf and Arlington Heights Road and on the Pace bus line, I'm hopeful that it would qualify for the Parking Over People Act that just was enacted in June, and so that we won't need quite as much parking on this property. A lot of times with affordable housing, you don't need a parking spot for every unit. And so there's going to be people that do not have cars, that are relying on public transportation. So I'm not worried about the parking deficit. I think that a better way to, if the people over parking isn't applicable in this case, I think a better way to look at parking would be to look at the counts of the church attendance. We recently did that for a project that was for First United Methodist Church, where we looked at how many people were actually at the church on a Sunday. That seems like that seems like a better indication of how much parking is needed, rather than just kind of our general square foot kind of zoning that seems to be a little bit out of date. So I'm in support of the village providing a letter to IDA in support of this. We don't have any other applications that we have indicated our support, so I think this is an excellent one to do that. And then I also am in support of the loan from the trust fund. It is a big chunk of the trust fund, and so I would be very interested to see the loan repayment of that, so that we can then hopefully, since it's a loan, then hopefully we can use it again for other future projects. So I think this is just really well needed. We have lots of people that are looking for affordable housing. It's important that long-term residents can stay in Arlington Heights and actively participate in our community, stay close to friends. And the comment about being close to the neighbors on the west side, since those are 2-story homes, I'm wondering if it would make sense that in this configuration that a 3-story building was close to the 2-story homes, and then the 4-story building be closer to the church. So then that would give kind of a natural step up from a 2-story home to a 3-story building to a 4-story building. And I think that is all of my comments. So thank you very much. So I encourage you to go forward with this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Dunnington. Trustee Bertucci?
Thank you, Mayor. Is it Julie? Yes. Can you come up, Julie, to the, thank you. First, let me just say, generally, I agree with staff and their concerns, and Trustee Schwingbeck with a lot of what he brought up, and then with what Trustee Dunnington brought up about the location. I do think the location is favorable in comparison to the Gulf Arlington corridor. However, let me ask you, have you discussed anything with the surrounding residents yet?
Not yet. That's kind of one of the next steps with the neighbors.
Julie, I got to tell you, very important, and you'll save yourself a lot of time and aggravation. Are you familiar with Arlington Heights? Are you a part of this?
I am definitely new to Arlington Heights and working here.
Okay, I would think that you might want to you might want to look to the a previous development that's in the process of being built now called Grace Terrace, and when it comes to 3 and 4 stories, I would not vote for 3 or 4 stories. I mean, you got to come down to probably 2, unless you could really come up with a favorable look with 3 stories. That's what we had them do, and I think they spent a lot of time and money trying to do this 3-story thing that backed up to the residents. The residents weren't happy, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't pass without being at the proper. So if you move forward through thinking that you've got it, and then at the last minute, nobody's really talked to the residents, all of a sudden the residents swarm this room,
that will not happen. We will have talked to them first, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we appreciate this early review process. We did ask the staff. We said, well, we haven't had a chance to actually talk to residents yet, but we're kind of want to make sure that we're at least on a track that may have a little bit of traction with the village. And so certainly the immediate next step would be to talk with neighbors and to get additional feedback. And I think incorporating the other comments that have been given. Can I address one of the questions that Trustee Schwingbeck asked? Because it may be related
I think what we'll do is we're going to go through the whole board,
Got
and
it.
then we'll see about answering 1 or 2 questions afterwards.
Right. This is just giving me an opportunity to finish my comments.
Perfect.
Okay. And then, Randy, as far as property tax, if this was built there and it remained church property, would that building throw off property tax?
It depends on the nature of the business arrangement that they have as an entity. I don't know if you want to comment on that, or if you have any comments on that, Ms. Rodman.
I think Julie's prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So what this partnership proposes is that the church only retains ownership of the land and enters into a very long-term ground lease with the owner entity of the property. So every affordable housing development is set up as its own owner entity, okay? And part of that owner entity includes the tax credit investor. And then POA acts as the managing member, and so we are responsible for all of the day-to-day operations. As a taxable entity, it will be subject to property taxes, and there are some abatements available to affordable housing in the state of Illinois. That is something we typically would look to take advantage of because it does help us increase the operating feasibility of the property, but there are still property taxes paid. So it is indeed a taxable entity. It does not get the benefit of the exemption that the church would have today.
Right, okay, because that's an important piece, and that shows you're willing to, we know for a fact, in fact, we just received a report from staff talking about the amount of service calls to not only senior residences of multi-resident but also low-income senior, and they have a higher amount of calls. Well, we know, not a problem. We know we need to help but we need to pay our bills. Otherwise, that burden goes on to everybody else. So,
Understood.
so setting it up so that there's property taxes, I think, is going to be very, very important. So, heights of buildings, like I said, you got to talk to the residents, and because chances are you're going to probably have to come down. I don't know. I'm real concerned that there'd even be 4 stories there. The site circulation that staff mentioned, I definitely would have some concerns about looking at that. And my other question was, is this, just because Trustee Schwingbeck brought it up, is this an active church currently, and will it remain an active church?
Would one of the church members like to address that?
No, that's all right. My name is Joel Hartland, and I am a trustee of Incarnation. We are a small church. We are an active church. Specifically, you were asking about Sunday attendance. It's 30-ish, 50 on a good Sunday. We're small, but we're still here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. And Julie, if you could come back. My other concern, and I'll leave it for staff to give us more recommendations, but is the size of the loan from the trust fund comparatively speaking to the project, and how many other projects might come forward. So to have a loan of that size and using that much of the trust fund for one project, that would be something I'd be concerned about, and I'd want to have staff drill down on that at some point. So those are my general concerns. I mean, again, not to put a damper on the project, because I think it's a great project, great location, but you have to be mindful of the neighbors and the surrounding area when you look at how many stories high and size and circulation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Bertucci. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. Thank you
Can you stay up?
Oh, go ahead and sit.
I'm happy to. Okay.
I think there'll be more comments. I do have a question first, though, for Director Rodman, and that is about the land banking comment that was in the staff report, because I, too, was surprised when I read it. And maybe you can explain it further, because I know we've done land banking for other types of projects. Is there something about this particular project that means it's not appropriate? I can think of certainly shopping centers, where even the one right across the road on Gulf, where we did land banking of quite a number of spaces. So could you explain it further?
The village code, the zoning code specifically, doesn't allow the land banking of parking to be provided in lieu of required stalls unless a variation is granted. So the village board can grant a variation to say, for example, 100 parking stalls are required. We're only going to require you to build 75. You can land bank 25 on the condition that should the village determine those spaces are needed, you agree to put those in. So certainly the village has done it in the past. The mechanism to do that would be to grant a variation.
So perhaps that's what we did. I guess you would have been there with me, so on quite a few of these. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. There have been a lot of great comments. When I look at the site, frankly, it's just an odd-shaped piece site, and it would be difficult when that being R3, thinking about single-family homes, even if it were to be sold for that. I think you could only do a cul-de-sac at the end and just a few houses. So I can see why there would be struggles with figuring out what to do with this. I do believe another organization might have looked at this site at one time for some kind of a project, if my memory serves me correctly, and they decided it was difficult to work with. But that doesn't mean this wouldn't be difficult to work with. I would agree with the flipping of the 3 and 4 stories. I wouldn't want the 4 stories closest to the houses. I appreciate what Trustee Bertucci was talking about in terms of, and Trustee Schwingbeck, about the reactions of neighbors, and they aren't even necessarily neighbors that are adjacent to a project. They could be blocks away and really not likely to be affected by it. So that's definitely something you have to think about. In terms of the loan, I was thinking a lot about that. And, we're accumulating the money, and it's my understanding that right now this is the only application. Is that correct? From the material? And so at some point, I think we're going to want to spend that money. And I am, and as this is to be structured as a loan, I would be in favor of going ahead and spending the money. I'm thinking about it in terms of, all right, you work for years and years and years to save money for your retirement. And then you retire, and then you don't want to spend the money because you're afraid to spend the money because something better might come along. And I think we have to not have that mindset. And I bring that up because I recently retired, so I get that sort of mindset. Sometimes you just have to spend the money. And so I would be in favor of certainly discussing a loan and in terms of how the payback would be structured and so forth. And that's an important aspect, that it would be a loan as opposed to just a gift that we would not have a chance to recoup anything from. So to me, that's very important, and I would be in favor of doing that. And certainly, I would think it's appropriate for the village to support the application for the subject proposal. I know that the staff has a lot of concerns, primarily to me, I think we really have to be careful about how the project would be structured physically, to have lower buildings or doing the step back closest to the houses, especially on the west, because it's, just looking at the map, it's pretty close, really, when you look at it. And I can imagine that there would be concerns from the neighbors who would live there. And I think that's everything that I wanted to bring up at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee LaBedz. Trustee Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a really neat idea. I don't know whose idea it was, but I thought this was an excellent use of land. And knowing the size of your congregation, I just imagine, 30 of you sitting in a room and somebody having an aha moment, like, wow, we could really do this, And so it's clever. I hadn't seen anything like this before, and I'm sure that there's other churches with, in your similar situation, with land that's available to use. So why not try to use it for a cause like this? It just, kudos to you. I don't have any earth-shattering, things to add that my colleagues haven't already said. They're very smart people, and they prove it every meeting. I echo a lot of their sentiments. The one thing, as we talk about, the AHTF funds, I'd really have to go and take a look at what the legislative intent there was when we had done that. I don't know that we necessarily set that fund up to become a bank per se and hand out loans. Maybe this is an appropriate thing to be able to direct the funds towards. I think that there's other ways and other vehicles that have been presented to us to be able to continue to add to that coffer as we move down the road as a village. Again, so looking at that, I certainly do think that it's an appropriate application to be submitted for that. How we handle it is something that I would need to take a look at further. But, in terms of what you guys are trying to do, my hat's off to you. I think that this is a really, really clever idea, really good use of, potential good use of the land. And I know it's preliminary, so I'm not going to get into the weeds on designs and all that sort of stuff. But I think you're headed in the right direction here with some of this. And so if you're looking for a little bit of tailwind from the board, I think, you probably have it to continue working on this and see where it goes. So good luck.
Thanks, Trustee Gilbert. Trustee Manganaro.
Mayor Tenaya, I'll just start by saying broadly, I support moving this project forward. I don't see anything in the concerns that we haven't addressed in other projects and that can't be overcome through the process. We can't be in favor of affordable housing and try to limit that to only Arlington Heights residents. It's just not feasible when, for economic viability, public support is needed. That's usually going to come from the state, and that takes away our power to regulate any favorability for Arlington Heights residents. And I do see it still as a priority that the board very broadly supports. So I think we just need to get used to the fact that we don't have that control in this case. I think in this case, we're not going to have the control over the parking either. I tend to agree with Trustee Dunnington that being on a transit corridor will likely make it subject to people over parking. The other comment I have about parking is my understanding, I think Trustee Dunnington's comment is also germane here, that a place of worship does not typically have a sanctuary, a fellowship hall, and a narthex that are all occupied to their full capacity at the same time. And so a study would make a lot of sense. I am all in favor of support for the Lightsey application. And as I said, when we set up the Affordable Housing Trust rules earlier this year, 1.3 million sounds like a lot of money until you start trying to build something. And then it goes pretty quickly. This is a viable project. This is a project that could be done within a reasonable period of time, would provide a significant amount of affordable housing to seniors. And I think we should seriously consider providing the funds through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you. That's about all I got right now. I'd like to see it move forward.
Thanks, Trustee Manganaro. Trustee Zyck.
Thank you, Mayor. Overall, when I first saw this, I love the idea. Obviously, it's one of our strategic priorities, and you look at affordable housing from a couple different areas, trying to make it, inexpensive enough or affordable enough that those starting out in their life can move in, and those that are at the opposite end, that are on fixed incomes that need something like this. So I think it hits those priorities. I've got a lot of thoughts here, but here's the thing. Obviously, this is a preliminary thing, and there's a lot of areas that have to be figured out here. The whole funding part coming from the trust fund. Well, yeah, it's a lot of money, but at the same time, we've had over $1 million in this for a while, and I know I've asked more than once sitting here, what are we doing with that money? And now here's an opportunity to do something that hits one of our strategic priorities. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But that's what we have the Housing Commission for them to look at it and see, does this make sense from their priorities or from their conversations? They know better right now what's coming down the pike and what kind of things are out there. So obviously, I'm looking for good feedback from them on how this goes forward. Trustee Schwingbeck, your heart's in the right place, as far as wanting people in Arlington Heights to be able to use it. It's the right thing. And everybody in Arlington Heights that needs this will be able to apply for one of the units. But once they get here and once they're living there, they are now Arlington Heights residents. So we are making areas for Arlington Heights residents. So I think that makes sense from that. The whole neighbor issue and whether it's 3 to 4 stories. I think a lot of that, especially with Grace Terrace, was born out of conversations with the neighbors and where it came from. So obviously, we're going to hear you still have to go down that path, and figure out exactly what's right there. I drove in there, and I've driven by there for years. That was the first time I ever drove, and I apologize I drove on your property, but I wanted to kind of get a look at it. And it makes sense to be able to use this. And I like what you're doing where you're thinking about the green space. I think that's really important also. So keep that in mind and keep that going. But obviously, you're going to have to get those neighbors to kind of come in. Because if you look at Grace Terrace is one thing, but if you look at the other one that was built before that, Crescent Place up north, that's I think 4 stories. You know, so that has multiple floors on it. Julie, right? I did have a question though that if there was pushback on the height, have you figured out, is there a break-even point for you that how many units you have to make this viable?
It's a great question. I would say 50 to 60 is kind of a sweet spot, and below that, you start to have a lot of operating inefficiencies. Because you need to fully staff a building with maintenance and property managers, with our community impact staff. And so obviously in an affordable development, the revenue is limited by what the rents can be under the program. And our operating expenses need to cover all of the necessary costs. So we're just trying to work within that balance so that we've got enough revenue that it's well-maintained, well-staffed. We've got great people working there. And we've got a really great living environment for many, many years to come. So I think there's some room. I think, the balance that we've been thinking about that I know will be part of the conversations with neighbors is, a lower story building, 2 stories, it takes up more room. So there's then, kind of encroachment into that green space where then maybe some of the parking considerations to do a little less parking helps mitigate that. So I feel like based out of those conversations, there's things that can be tested. And obviously we've just presented one test concept for consideration. But we can, our goal here was to get this kind of feedback so we could know what the next steps look like and the kind of things we should be testing out.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And then the last thing I'll just say, actually, 2 things, I apologize. We were talking about the parking. I think, Trustee Dunnington, I think you said, the last parking issue that we had with the other church, it was the same thing. They're not all there at one point, and it's kind of coming and going. If all of a sudden you guys get a real uptick and more people, I'm sure you can put in more masses, more services, and be able to kind of, work it out that way. So I think that's something that can be doable. It's interesting to me, some of the comments, and I just regarding the location. I did a quick check here, and the Jewel Osco is about a quarter mile away from there. To me, it felt like when I was driving around there, like, boy, there's really nothing right there. I think it's because of just the neighborhood that it's kind of in. There's manufacturing across the street from there that it just kind of didn't feel like there's much there. So whether that means anything to your plans and how you're getting people around to the different areas, that's something that I would take into consideration. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Zyck. Now, I know that we have one trustee that is absent tonight, but she had some thoughts and shared it with Manager Recklouse. If you wouldn't mind sharing with the group.
Happy to. Yeah, Trustee Santa Maria asked that this statement be kind of shared into the record. And she said, overall, I appreciate staff bringing this forward for early review. My initial impression is that this is a thoughtful and innovative proposal that addresses a growing need for affordable senior housing while making productive use of underutilized property. I appreciate that the proposal was scaled down from earlier concepts and appears to preserve green space and buffering for surrounding neighbors. Before moving further, I'd like additional information regarding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund request, including loan terms, long-term affordability commitments, and how this investment would leverage outside funding. I'd also like to better understand the projected resident population, transportation options, parking assumptions, and how programming will support seniors aging independently and remaining connected to the broader community. I view the staff comments regarding the site design, circulation, landscaping density, and building height as important design considerations that should continue to be refined through the formal review process rather than reasons at this stage to dismiss what appears to be a promising concept.
Thanks, Manager Recklouse. All right. I think Trustee LaBedz had one more comment that she wanted to add to her.
Thank you, because I forgot. But Trustee Zyck actually did say it, and as long as this isn't, should this move forward, is not marketed as Arlington Heights seniors will move in here, to make it clear, because that's where we've had problems before, that people misunderstood that it has to be open to everybody. Should this move forward and people come in, they will be Arlington Heights residents, and they'll have exactly the same responsibilities and enjoyment and all that as we have. They'll spend money in the village, and they'll utilize other, like Park District and things like that. So they will be residents and they would be welcomed.
Very well. I do have some blue cards, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to share a couple thoughts of mine first, and then we'll go to the audience. And the first thing I want to say is I think it's clear by past performance and history for as long as Robin and I have been on the board together that Arlington Heights has been a leader in these kinds of housing options. We really have. And I think that for the most part, we were very proud of all that. There's been projects come through here that took some time to get through. Changes were made, demands were made, conversations were had, and better projects were produced as a result. So Arlington Heights, I think, has done its fair share of the lifting in these kinds of projects in recent years, and there's no reason for us to stop, so long as they're good projects. And on its face value, this looks like a good project. I will say that the site, the location here, is really interesting to me because of where it is and the proximity to the Jewel and the Walgreens. But along with that, the location has its drawbacks. There are these single-family homes all the way around it that I am 100% confident that you as a group of hopeful developers are going to have your hands full convincing that this is appropriate. So my best advice to you, and Frank, you know this more than anybody in this room, or as well as anybody in this room, is to do all that you can to soften that blow every step of the way. And the first step is going to be height. It may not be density. Density, it's a big number. 60 is a big number. 50 is a big number. But 4 stories is a bigger number. When I have my entire life savings wrapped up in a 2-story single-family home all the way around this property that was always just this beautiful green space and this lovely church and all these wonderful folks who go there, and now suddenly you're going to put 60 units and 4 stories in my backyard. That's where you're going to get your biggest pushback, guaranteed. And this room will be full of people who are not happy about that. Just curious, in this audience room that's here, raise your hand if you are a supporter of this project and are here because of this project. Just tell me, okay, so this room is full of supporters, right? There'll be 10 times this number of people who will be concerned about this project. And if you need any proof of that, just go watch a few old episodes of Village of Arlington Heights Village Board for any number of the 3 or 4 recent projects that have come through here. Get educated and pay attention because it all matters. What I would say beyond that is I certainly hope the $750,000 is a loan. Is the word loan appropriate? Just by heads shaking?
Yes, it is structured as a loan. It is generally paid back over a term that tends to be longer, like 30 years. But there, we put out a request that we thought we could certainly support based on the impacts of this project that we think would be very positive to seniors. But we understand that, you may think that a different amount and a different structure is important. But grants can't really go to affordable housing developments because of the ownership structure I mentioned before, which is actually like a limited liability corporation. If it takes grants, then it has to pay taxes. And so the funding from all these sources that we raise, other than the private first mortgage, are generally structured as what are called soft loans or subordinate loans paid out of cash flow.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One of my questions that I wrote down here was answered several times, and that is having to do with who gets chosen to be the residents here, so we know the answers to that. Land banking on the parking, 100% yes, in my opinion. It is a clever and affordable and beneficial tool. So I would ask this developer to do its research and determine what the number of stalls are that you believe are appropriate, and come prepared to defend that one way or another. And at the end of whatever studies are created, that'll be determined by this board if it's appropriate or not. But I believe it's a wise position to take. I'm a little bit cynical. Can you put up, Emily, could you put up the site plan on here real quick? There you go. So along with staff, I'm really, that setback on the southwest corner there, that will never fly. So I know this is just round one, and you've already said that, but be very sensitive to that when you come up with your approach that you want to run through and up the flagpole here. My cynical side says, what is going to happen with the existing church? And many of you in the room here probably know what I do for a living, but in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's of course going to be building 2 down the road. And if this goes well, we can add some parking to the north and build building 2 here, and we keep the same entry and everybody wins. I'm going to ask this in the most honest and reasonable way. Has that been a part of your conversation at all, ever? No. The church is not planning on leaving. The church is staying the whole time. In a minute, just wait a minute. And I'm not saying that that's an impossible future perspective, but if that is something, then I would recommend that you get that out and not make it a secret. Okay? The last thing I'll ask you to go through when and if you come back through all of this, how does this project become affordable? And I mean that in the most general terms. We know that lumber is expensive. We know that labor is expensive. And if you're going to build a house or an office building or anything, it's expensive per square foot to build. Through the loans and the tax credits and the things that you'll be able to get through your organization, I suppose that'll be the main driving force on it. But you still have to pay for the 2x4s and the roof trusses and the concrete and the excavation and all that. So this is if 25 million is what you think this project is going to be costing to develop, what is going to happen when it becomes 30 million? And what's going to happen when some of us up on the board here say there's no way 4 stories is going to fly here? I mean, and that's what I'll close with by telling you, in my opinion, I'm just one member on this board, there's no way 4 stories is going to fly on this site. 3 maybe in some portions, but I would be shocked if 4 stories gets built here. And I think you're going to hear that again and again and again from the residents in the area here. No one could have ever imagined that that's what they're going to have to live next to. So I'll end it with that. Those are ending of my thoughts. And I have 4 blue cards here. And if there's anyone else that wants to speak that hasn't done a blue card, that's fine. You don't have to. I will call on you anyway. But I do want to make sure that we try to do this expeditiously. It's 10 o'clock, and this is just a preliminary hearing. So we want to keep our comments to 3 minutes or less, and Maggie's going to put that little timer on up there. And now I have a 5th card. So let's start with Linda Wasey.
Hi, my name is Linda Wasey. I am co-chair of the Northwest Alliance for Housing Affordability. I'm really excited about this project. I'm thrilled that this board has chosen to make affordable housing the number 2 strategy, and you are putting your thoughts now into action by many of you supporting this project. I also want to say that our organization of very active and concerned residents of Arlington Heights that are on that team are also supported by Connections to Home in Evanston that have been wonderful mentors to us and provide us with a lot of resources. And those resources are going to be available to the church and to those residents to help them maneuver their way through this project. Mainly, I'm thinking about the neighbor situation in that there is training, there is all kinds of help and guidance for them as they learn how to educate themselves on different strategies on promoting the project and building the relationships with the neighbors that we're all talking about and we all understand. So I look forward to meeting with the folks at the church and being able to share some of that information with them. And we're just really excited. So thank you.
Thanks, Linda. That's very helpful. Next is Cleo Nykel.
Good evening, trustees. I appreciate your time. I'm Cleo Nykel. I'm a member of St. Simon's Episcopal Church for 30 years while I've been an Arlington Heights resident. I support the Church of the Incarnation and their low-income housing tax credit application. And I also support the use of the village's Affordable Housing Trust Fund with a loan in the amount of $750,000. I would just like to thank you because I've seen how the village works with developers to come to a reasonable solution and encourage more dialogue on this project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cleo. Jean Wood.
Mr. Mayor and trustees, thank you very much for your insightful discussion tonight and listening to each other. That's where we begin. And also, I am a United Methodist member of First United Methodist Church, and I believe that our church helped start your church. Isn't that correct? So these are my kids. And I am so proud of them because the motto of the United Methodist Church is open minds, open hearts, open doors. And they have taken it upon themselves to follow through with the mission of the church. And this makes me very excited to have that happen. I have several hats. I won't take more than 3 minutes. One hat was the fact that I'm United Methodist. I'm also a member of NAHA, which you just heard her speak. I've also just went to 2 years ago, I went to a 60th reunion on Zoom of my classmates from Yale Divinity School. This lets you know how old I am. One of my classmates is Lois Capps, and she became a congresswoman, and she had retired, of course, because she's my age, And the most exciting thing she had to offer to us was the fact that her church was building a low-income senior housing community on their property. And you know what, and this is in California, so you know what housing is like in California and the price of it. And she said it has been a boon to everybody. It's been a boon to those who they would sell their houses to younger people because it's older housing stock and the younger people can afford it better. And then when they came to the church, one of the major problems for senior citizens is isolation. They come to the church, even when it doesn't matter what denomination they are, they come over for programs. They come and they help out in the nursery school. They are involved in the community of the church. So don't just think that this is going to remain 30 and 50 members. It might be more than that. So the third hat I have is I live at Luther Village. And Mayor Tinaglia probably remembers all of those fights. They had a lot of fights because I wasn't there, but I've heard about them and probably they're expanded. But all of the neighbors hated it. They didn't want this idea. They were going to have these high-rise buildings and all of these things. A lot of those neighbors now are residents. So I will say that there is a great need for affordable senior housing because I have friends who would like to live at Luther Village, but they can't afford it. Makes me feel guilty. So if there's some place in our community that I can direct them to, like this building, I will be very, very happy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jean. And I was actually the architect who worked on the Luther Village as a young kid out of college. And my boss nearly got run out of town because of that project. But it was one of those things that people were just afraid of because they didn't know any better. So you're absolutely right. Next is Daniel Cruzius.
Hello, Village Board, Mayor Tinaglia, village staff, and the trustees and clerk. I would like to, I'm Daniel Cruzius, 204 North Patton Avenue, Arlington Heights. I'm a 30-year lifelong resident, and I think this is an excellent idea. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church for Arlington Heights, and I believe this is an excellent exercise of their religious freedom to help give housing to seniors and low-income folks. And as a person who is a part-time caregiver, I know that caring for our seniors is important. And something I would ask the board to think about, to ponder a little bit, have our hearts been frozen by our previous conversations on housing? Just because there have been residents in opposition before does not necessarily mean it will happen again. I mean, it very well may, but we should at least keep our ears, eyes, hearts, minds, souls open for this possibility. And we should also consider that working for affordable housing in Arlington Heights is a good. It's both a good look for the village, and it's good for the residents. But also, doing so would address our town's history of having housing discrimination, and that working for affordable housing is a great way to counter that. And I would also say that there's this little saying that sometimes when people have opposed it, they've sometimes said, like, not in my backyard or yes in my backyard. In this case, it's yes in God's backyard. And I will also say that Church of the Incarnation is an active church. We do work with them, and that I'm glad they're doing great things to follow the Spirit's calling. And I hope that you all answer that as well, and will eventually come to approve this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And the last card I have is Christina. Christina Cruzius.
Hello, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak and for considering this project tonight. I am very excited about this possibility. I too am United Methodist, so I'm excited to see one of our neighboring churches embarking on this work to serve the community and filling a great need of senior housing in this particular case. I know it's been said when affordable housing has previously been discussed that there aren't many places in town that this can happen. Meanwhile, there's a great need. So I think it's very exciting when a project such as this comes forward. I would say too that I definitely encourage you to support the application for the Arlington Heights Trust Fund for affordable housing. I know we've had fee in lieu as an option available for years, and this would actually make that mean something by having it go towards a future project. And yes, I do hope that the developer collaborates well with the neighbors. It sounds like they will. And I would say let's not get so afraid based on what we have heard in the past projects that we preemptively limit the possibilities for this one. So yes, we should definitely be in dialogue, and we should certainly have in the back of our mind that we could face pushback, but I also don't want to be too quick to shut down certain aspects of it. I know we have quite a big process, and collaboration and discussion is what makes these projects better. So let's have that conversation first before we make any decisions ahead of time. I would also say it is interesting to me that the Supreme Court case Arlington Heights was involved in was brought up earlier, because that was also a faith-based organization that was trying to use their land in a meaningful way to provide housing as an opportunity for folks. I hope that this time that we follow a different path and allow that affordable housing to take place, flourish, and allow Arlington Heights to be a more inclusive and welcoming village. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Well said. I see a couple hands in the audience. Come on up. Dr. Motto, go ahead.
Thank you, Rich. I am George Motto. I'm a member of the Senior Citizens Commission. As I've said so many times in the past, that our main objective or goal on the Senior Citizens Commission Age-Friendly Community Initiative, which is a mouthful, is affordable housing for seniors. So I personally am behind this. And I too am very cynical, Mayor. All I can say now is, wow, after what happened at International Plaza, I think we've been kind of in a funk. After what happened with Grace Terrace, we were kind of in a funk. And at that time, I was very fearful that the rage and the fear engendered by our community negative response would dampen or prevent further achievement. I'm not cynical anymore. I've lived in Arlington Heights for 50 years. I've seen tremendous change, and listening to everyone, their cogent comments, people that are concerned, I'm sure that if we work together and we're reasonable, we will be able to conquer this elephant in the room. And Mr. Blomquist was part of that with the Supreme Court decision that occurred many years ago. That was about affordable housing, but of a different type. So I think we've come an awful long way. And I'm confident, though, that listening to everybody here, that if we get rid of our fixed ideas, if we talk about things, if we realize that this affordable housing initiative has to be conquered, I think will do very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mato. Another hand in the back. Come on up.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I live in the neighborhood where the low-income housing was built on Rand Road. And our neighborhood was concerned about traffic, but there are very few people who actually drive cars. There's a lot of empty spaces there. But the one thing I will comment on is what Trustee Zyck mentioned. We have no PACE buses that go across that property. It is difficult for people who live there who do not have vehicles to get places. And I will just tell you, we have neighbors that are commenting that, yes, the Jewel is not that far away. It's like one strip mall away. But when they don't have a way to get there, the carts are coming into the community. And so in Schaumburg, my mother lives in Hoffman Estates. The Schaumburg Township offers a smaller PACE bus to pick people up at their home and take them to like Walmart or Target or places because they don't have the transportation. I think this is a lovely idea, but I think it is also very important that they still have independence and the ability to access the services they need. And it's good to know that there is a PACE that goes there, but I just don't know what is available to the seniors. And I know it seems like not the biggest thing in terms of, the development of the plan, but it is certainly something to consider because I would hate to see people kind of just bound in a spice and not able to get out to take care of themselves. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, very well. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, come on up, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Ka-hyung Kim, the new pastor of the Church of the Incarnation from July 1st. Anyway, United Methodist Church is not an individual church. It belongs to the conference, and we, UMC, support one another. I hear the concern about the continuation of the ministry. Yes, we will continue the ministry as a United Methodist Church with the supports of other UMC and the denomination. Yes, we will be busier to serve our senior citizens.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else before we close this out? Yes.
So just once again, I'm Joel Hartland. And the last time I was in this room was a Grace Terrace meeting. So I just want to assure you that's been part of the DNA to this project's design. That, yes, we back 17 other homes, and that's why we're seeking to be wholly on the front end of the lot. I don't know that there's really anything else I wanted to convey other than, well, yes, very much so. We are on our heels, having not reached out to our neighbors yet. But that was because of the opportunity of this meeting. We only realized a week ago it was public. And we have been doing our due diligence up to this point to see that we have a viable project before we encourage the neighbors or discourage them, because that can go either way. I've been coached as we've developed this. And really, that's all I wanted to put a cap on.
All right. Well, thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. Well, I think, hang on, Gene. What I think happened here tonight is a little education, right? And I think that this board spoke pretty openly about all of our individual thoughts, mostly good, and I think some concerns. So now the developer and ownership have to go back to the drawing board and determine their next steps, along with staff's help and support to guide you. And if you make all the right decisions and you listen and you end up convincing and You're going to wear a lot of different hats from, teacher to student to salesman to everything else. How do you get to the next level on this? And all we were trying to do tonight is give you a little bit of thought to keep in your hip pocket before you went and spent a lot more money on something, on an idea that maybe was not so great. But I think you've gotten some good feedback tonight, and it was worth your time doing it, and it was worth our time doing it. So I thank you for coming and doing this. I think we all do. Staff has a lot of work to do with you. And I guess lastly, what I'll say is, I don't think that any of the comments about dealing with the neighborhood concerns was meant to frighten you or scare you away. It was meant to just educate you, share with you what is likely to be imminent, so that you can be prepared and answer things in the right way, or have a different solution or some alternative solutions in your hip pocket that might be better somehow. So that's your job. And with a little luck, you'll go through these things in a good way, and we'll see you again here before too long. Staff, is there anything else that we want to share before we wrap up?
No, I feel like it was pretty good feedback from the board, so we appreciate the.
Ms. Rodman, you have plenty to share and coach with, right?
Yes, thank you. The feedback was very helpful.
Okay, great. Jean, come on up. Don't always do this, but for you, I'm making an exception.
It's just that, I just remembered one other thing. I live at Luther Village.
Yeah.
The property's owned by the Lutheran Home, which is tax exempt. I pay a lot of property taxes.
Yeah.
Because, it's an individual
Do you live in the individual fourplex units or in the apartment building?
I live in a villa.
In the villas.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do pay property tax. Everybody pays property tax at Luther Village.
So that's owned by Charles Shaw, though. That's not owned by the Lutheran Home. All those
The property is owned by Lutheran Home. We lease it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what they probably do.
Yeah.
is
So
lease
it'll be
the property.
interesting how this works. There's always a new education around the corner, so this will be interesting to see how it works.
Let's not look. You've got a big guy on our team.
And you have the big guy on your team. Yes, you do. All right. If there's nothing else here, is there anything else from the board? If not, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Schwingbeck. And yeah, seconded by trustee LaBedz. Was there anyone in the audience that want to speak on something else that has not been covered here tonight? I didn't mean to omit that. Seeing none, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
These I want to say nay.